Welcome to Feel Less Do More. Coming up on today's episode, we're joined by activist and co-founder of the Open Clasp Theatre Company, Catrina McHugh MBE.
Now, the surveillance on anyone who protests is so big, you couldn't do what we did. We pulled down fences, we climbed onto the big silos, and that we're going to host the nuclear weapons. We watched the police lie in court, and we wouldn't stand up for the judge. We'd all sit down, so that kind of non-violent direct action is what I kind of learned. And they got us into a women's prison when we were in New York. And that governor walked in and the play was happening. Key change. All the women were on their feet going, "Ah!" And the governor walked in and went, "What is happening? Who are they?" In 10 years' time, I could be working in the prison, going to the women. So we've just finished the workshop. So where's the change now? So where the women are now, where do they want to be in 10 years? What needs to change, not only for them, but society? And when I did that in 2022, it was the first time I lost a bit of hope.
Hi, Catrina.
Hi, Jill.
Well, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for asking me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. For those who don't know, before we get into the depths of the story, can you just give us an overview? What is Open Clasp?
So Open Clasp is a theatre company, a women's theatre company that I co-founded back in 1998. We're based in Newcastle upon Tyne at West End Women and Girls Centre. This is what I always say, this is how I say it. So we work locally, regionally, nationally and internationally. And we meet communities of women where they're at. And we make the best theatre we can with the aim of changing the world one play at a time. Big scouser, but live in Newcastle, changing the world one play at a time. So we're a feminist theatre company. So we're political and we're about using the arts for social change. So yeah, that's kind of how I sum up who we are.
Making a dent in the universe, that's
we are,
your passion.
Totally. Yeah.
But your route into theatre is quite an interesting one, because that wasn't, that there was sort of a point very early on where you were at a bit of a crossroads, which could have taken you down a very different path.
Yeah, could have been a hairdresser. Yeah, so I left school when I was 16, and then I had a first job and was sacked from the first job, or encouraged to leave, is how I used to say it.
What was your first job?
My first job was actually Topshop, so it was my second job. I used to work at the Gyro Bank.
Topshop was my first job as well, yeah.
So it was all at 16 and kind of being in work, and then I used to just mess about. Like, I just couldn't take it seriously. I couldn't take the people who wanted to be the managers of the team that seriously. And when I think back to it now, we were all 16, 17, 18, do you know what I mean? All kind of, my job was to flick checks every day and type the numbers in. So, and it was before visual display units, so before computers. Look how old that makes me look. So we were just a big team of women, and then I would just mess about and I had my first girlfriend who I met then. So we lived together in a bedsit. We messed around a lot in work and at home. And then one thing led to another, and then we ended up getting sacked from the job. She got sacked and I got encouraged to leave. And then, big long story, it's a bit bigger, complicated story, but then I went to the job centre, and the job centre said, look, we could give you the scheme, because it was 1980, so let's go 79. So in 1981, you can do a scheme, a youth opportunities programme in hairdressing or drama. And to be a hairdresser in Liverpool was like really, I was punk. So I was into punk. So that was like a really trendy thing to do in Liverpool, or do drama. And for some reason I chose drama, and then I started on the scheme. So Dave Morrissey was on the scheme with me, who's famous, and Kathy Tyson was on the scheme with me. She joined that year. And it was the real change for me in terms of one working class. My brothers are all joining the army. I wanted to join the army at some point in those early, something to do, get out of Liverpool, move on, see the world, blow it up type of stuff. And then I just threw myself down, I was going, join the world to blow up, not really, but you know what I mean, that kind of, that
you don't want to actually go and blow the world up.
But that thing about kind of like the thing that moves you out of your city, if you're working class, is the army, or I'm not even sure what else it would have been then, or go to jail or move, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that was my opportunity, and and my family were very patriarchal, 4 older brothers. My dad was in the army, it was very like that. And then I joined the Youth Opportunities Programme, and that's when I met political people very different. So the Falklands War was happening at the time, and 3 of my brothers were in the Falklands War over there. And then, so my juxtaposition of my head was at the same time as meeting all these political people, like Labour Party, different viewpoints. My brothers were all in the Falklands as well. So at home, my dad had kicked me out and I'd gone back home at some point. So that's a whole other story. But I'd gone back home and I was making banners and kind of, because they were about to come home. And then I was with political people at the same time. So I kind of loved my family and missed my brothers and worried about them. As much as I fought with them, I worried about them. And I was also embracing a different world in the drama that was about drama for social change. And then I was given, from that year, I was given a job, a full-time job on a youth training scheme in Salford, Manchester. So old Salford, so before it was done up on what you see now. And I was in the Liverpool Echo as a success story. And then given a full-time job teaching other young people. So I was 19 at that point, wow. And they were 18. So I lied and said I was 24. Because I thought there's no way they're going to take me seriously. And I was really broad Scouse then. I mean, really broad. So I had to change how I spoke. And then I did all of that. Then I met lesbians and I met feminists. Then I went to Greenham Common.
What was that like?
Going to Greenham Common, brilliant. I often talk about it. So my next girlfriend I met there, she was from the north of Ireland, and we were talking the other day about I lived at Greenham Common for a year, and it was an opportunity to live outside the law for that whole year. So now the surveillance on anyone who protests is so big. You couldn't do what we did. I mean, we broke into everything and we had bolt cutters and we pulled down fences. We climbed onto the big silos and that we're going to host the nuclear weapons, cruise missiles. And we blockaded roads and we did all of those things. And we watched the police sometimes lie, or a lot of the time lie in court. You know, there was lots of things and we wouldn't stand up for the judge. We'd all sit down, you know, so that kind of non-violent direct action is what I kind of learned. So I'm being with thousands of women around the base, and we were the young camp. So our gate was called Blue Gate. So our gate was very working class gate, and we were nearest to the pub and nearest to the dole office. Yeah, so we had two kind of avenues, but we were right on the road. So some of the camps were in the woods, and you know, and they all had their own story to tell those. And if anyone was watching this, they go, "Oh, I was at Orange Gate," and Orange Gate was older women. If I think about that now, they were probably about 30. Do you know what I mean? Because I was like 20, 21 at that point. You know, and then Green Gate was in the woods, so we said that's where all the witches lived and da-da-da. But we were very much, and Yellow Gate was the main gate, so they were like all the London dykes, and we were the north, so we were very much in the north, from the north of England and Scotland and Ireland, diverse, women of colour, and we just had the best laugh, but also learned lots about life, kind of, and injustice, I suppose, at the time. And then the miners' strike was happening, so the miners' wives would come and sit by the fire. So again, my politicisation was just like this. Then we met Indigenous people from America living in uranium reservation camps and places, and then they'd come over to the Quaker house and they would all talk, and then you go, wow, look at the world. And then you just seen that story where there were 6 young women were in the Quaker house in, I don't know where it was, London. And then all the police all came in and arrested them for talking. And then I was going, imagine if that was back in the day, that would be us. We'd be in the Quaker house, because the Quaker house was someone that hosted all those conversations when we were at Greenham as well. It was a completely different world. So how fortunate was we to kind of be in that moment of protest?
I'm fascinated because at the time that you're talking about, you know, I think I was about 16, 17. And I was at school and I'd just joined CND, and I went to ask the headmaster if I could set up an Amnesty International group at the school, and was told no, in no uncertain terms, no. Yeah. But I was watching all of these stories about Greenham Common on the telly and just thinking, oh my God, that's amazing. But I've never met anybody who was actually there.
Really?
You're the first person I've met who's actually there.
And we were really demonised.
You were?
We were dirty dykes. I mean, a bit like how everybody demonises trans people now. Mm. And then we were those people that everybody then hated or thought was, you know, damaging to the country. And actually we were trying to save the world. You know, we were trying to kind of raise all that awareness, and we were young. When I think about it now, I go, we were so young. I mean, me and the girlfriend from north of Ireland, we were responsible. We had the walkie-talkie. So there was no mobile phones or anything. So our job was, if once the cruise missiles were inside Greenham in the base, and they'd never been out at this point, our job was to if they did come out the gate, was to, and we remember, that girlfriend's called Trisha. Me and Trisha had the we remember the code word. We had to go COM7. That was our code to say the cruise missiles were coming out. We were 20. Do you know what I mean? And then the cruise missiles did come out one night. And so we had to do the walkie-talkie, and that was the telephone tree. So the telephone tree kicked off everybody in CND, everybody around the country then to come out onto the roads and start blockading. We were 20. And we started that telephone tree. And that was our responsibility to do. So how amazing was that?
That's incredible.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible.
But it was a different time in terms of protest. It was a different, we had more freedom. Like now you would get, there's all conspiracy things that you can be arrested for, that you could be in jail for a long, long time. And it's much harder to protest.
And also there's, if you look at the Just Stop Oil protesters.
Exactly.
And the length of sentences, all of those sorts of things, it is definitely, the dial has shifted quite considerably in terms of peaceful protest. And while you were at Greenham, was theatre part of that experience as well?
No. So I always tell a story about, like, I'm the artistic director of Open Clasp Theatre Company. Obviously, I'm 26 years down now, and this is how I protest. This is how I then am an activist and using the arts to make the change happen. And so when I was at Greenham, it's politicisation, that's what was happening then. That was what was happening on the scheme. Before that, it happened to be art. And then when I moved from Greenham to Manchester, so then I was back in Manchester, then I was with theatre companies off and on throughout, but Section 28 was happening, so I was out marching against that. I was playing pool, worked at Women's Aid, cash in hand jobs, just bouncing around life in my 20s. And then my next girlfriend, there wasn't many, but I tell a story. So then my next girlfriend and I supports one of our friends who'd been at Greenham, who'd had a baby, and she was struggling, little boy, she was struggling with the baby, and we said, we'll mind the baby for you so we could give her a break. Then we got broody. Then we had children. So she had a girl and I had a boy. And the story is with two lesbians in Manchester who got pregnant at the same time. Madness, pure madness. 3 months between the babies being born. So she had an emergency C-section and I was there when she had the C-section. Homophobia was rife at the time. You had the people, I remember when she was giving birth and I was 6 months pregnant, I remember the feeling of homophobia in the theatre, the people, me holding the baby and how they, imagine having that, to contemplate those feelings when you're in the most important moments, and it had been quite scary as well. So I did all of them things. So that was kind of life-changing. And my mum died. So my mum died right after the babies had been born. And then me and my partner at the time, we split up, but we lived together. So all of these women that are my exes are all my family still. So I'm really close to all of them. And so my current partner is Hufti from Western Women and Girls Centre, who I've been with for 32 years. So we are all, and when we did get civil partnered, all of these women stood and spoke. So we're part of that kind of queer lesbian family that has our people who were significant with us still. She does as well, Hufti does too. And then I had met Hufti when all this grief was happening, all this change was happening, and then I came to Newcastle. And with our son, Vinny, who was 2 years at the time, and then I thought, I'll go to university when he was little. I'd worked in a few bars, go to university, that'll be something I can do while he's little. Did drama, went back to drama, and then did a drama degree, and then went, oh, I love this, look at this. Everything I've done in my whole life in terms of practice and activism meets theory, and I kind of spent those 3 years just sucking it all up. I was like that, going, oh, this is brilliant. So other people were young and I was 30, how old would I have been, 33 or something, and I was just, oh, this is great, I loved it and embraced it all. And then Open Clasp came out of that degree.
Yeah, so it came out of your final project, really. What was your final project about?
So in the really simple way of explaining it, in year one, we learned about acting. So in year two, we learned about facilitation. So how you use creative methods to support conversation, discussion, debate, social change. Then in the third year, you could either do acting or you could do facilitation, or you could do both. So I was one of 5 women who had a shared politics, sense of humour, and a desire to support the voices of women on stage, say. And we felt like we were all good at acting and facilitating. So we came together and came up with a name for the company called Open Clasp, and then we all went off in different directions and worked with 5 different groups. So not me, one of the other women worked with West End Women and Gill Centre. I worked with an intergenerational group of lesbians because I was really keen to make sure there was a lesbian voice on stage, and other people worked with different women's groups. At the time, there was a regional women and girls network, so a network that supported youth workers who were all women who were working in the youth service across the region to be together to support each other. So we had gone to them and gone, look, we'd like to do this project. What do you think? And they were all like, who are you? I'm not really sure about this. Show me a plan, show me. But we'd kind of partnered with all of these networks, met with the groups, ran the workshops with the groups, then devised the show, then showcased it at Live Theatre, who gave us a free night. And all of that network of the women that have been directly involved, and then all of their other networks and all of their guests all came to see the show. So Live Theatre was packed with women on one night, then mixed the next night because we got sponsored for the next night. And the show was called After a Death, and it was a story based on 5 women to begin with, and their 5 dead mothers. So their mothers haunted them. They came back every Monday and then had conversations with each other and talked about their daughters, and everyone went. So it was kind of popular theatre, and it was really funny and really thought-provoking. So it was cabaret style, it was interactive, there was no fourth wall. Everybody, the audience in the second act, it was set in a talent contest, so people could get up and be part of the talent contest. And it was just a brilliant show, and everyone, this is brilliant. You should set up professionally and tour it. So me and one of the other women set up the company professionally. We had a management committee of women who were much more experienced than us. And we were 2 working class women going, oh my God, what are we doing? How are we going to do this? How are we going to raise the funds? How are we going to set a tour up? But with all of those networks and all of those partnerships that we'd built in the project, the first final year project for university, with all of that support, we set it up. So we got money from the Arts Council, we got money from the Northern Rock Foundation, and they all supported that first tour. And then when we did the first tour, survivors of domestic violence went, oh, that's brilliant. Can you make a play like that about our experiences? So popular, funny, thought-provoking, accessible, makes people think, understand. Yeah. So even though I know domestic violence in my own experience, I never would have then gone, I can just go and do that work. So me and the other woman who set the company up, we then went and did training. Then we worked with 100 women. Not necessarily going in with the issue of domestic violence, even though one of the groups was a group supporting survivors of domestic violence. We still went in with how we'd done our final year project with an empty page, really. A bit of a stimulus to get people talking, to build a character, to pull on the lived experiences, to have conversations with each other. And it's conscious raising. That's what it is. It's good old-fashioned conscious raising, like I'd done all my life. It's being in rooms, being in circles, and using the arts to talk. And then we created Fallen Knives and Run Around Wives based on that production. And then we went back touring that one. Then we were going to the communities, what else do you think we should look at? And they were going racism against people seeking asylum. So it was 2001, 2. So then we did that. And then did a show called Stand in Town. So we were very call and response to the communities. So while we were on tour, we were going, what else do you think we should do next? And we were project to project funded as a company. So we were funded by the Arts Council until 2012. So we did, if you look at, in the centre where we're based, if you look at the walls, you can see all of our work on this side. All of this work is before we're regularly funded by the Arts Council. Here is when we are more funded by the Arts Council. So it's about half and half in terms of the company's life. So that all of this is the building blocks of the company. And then we have a big win in 2015 and we end up in New York. With Key Change, the play that we'd made with women in prison. And that changed the direction of the company. So it actually did. Elevated us. Yes, it did. Yes, it was a key change for the company. Yes, totally. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about Key Change. What was that about?
So the way I tell the story is we were being very strategic about how we could be national. So we were then going, in order to support the voices of the women we're working with, we need to be at the tables with the people who make the decisions and have the power. Yeah. How do we do that? So we were working with young women at the time, and we were working with a company called Frantic Assembly, who everybody knows them internationally, the movement company, a theatre company. And we were going, right, carefully do it. We'll go to Liverpool, we'll go here, we'll go slowly. We'll not parachute into a community. We'll kind of make them as we've always done, make with communities, co-create. And then we were commissioned to work with women in prison. So it was a small project. and so we took the commission on while we were doing the big project. We took the commission on, went in, and the brief was to work with the women to support them to create a performance piece about their lived experiences that led to life in prison, then to take that show out with the prison and tour it to the male estate. So first time we would ever worked inside the prison, worked with the women, and the other option for the women was to perform the show themselves. So we did all of our methodology, our way of working, the same as we did when we were at university, the same thing, blank sheet of paper, one character, pull on the lived experiences, have fun, create, talk, knit together, talk about their personal and the political. And the women were very they knew where the tour was going, and they were going, I'm not finger wagging at these fellas. I know these fellas could be my brothers, my dad. I'm not doing that. Some women went, no, they need to be told. So we put that to one side because we just had the blank sheet of paper and said, let's just see what we create. And they didn't want to talk about prison, didn't want to talk about domestic violence, but then they did. So they talked about domestic violence and then they talked about the prison, wrote the script. The women loved it. The governor hated it. The governor was going, that's not true. I don't like it. The officers don't speak like that to the women. Lots of conversations that were challenging for me with the governor. But me and him were all right in the end, but challenging for me and the governor, and then the women loved it and went. So there was a bit of kind of manoeuvring with the governor. I said, come to the chapel and see what the women are doing. And he walked in and he still stood with his hands. I was still like this going, this is awful, because it's about drug smuggling. So it wasn't just about the life that leads to prison, which is what everyone thought, the victim. Yeah. It was about these strong women who had all of these experiences before they'd gone to prison that had meant that they were victims, but they were also survivors before they went to prison. And the reason why they were in prison was very much related to their lived experiences as women and young girls as well. So eventually he had to endorse it and let it go out of the prison, because that was the whole brief. I felt really responsible going, because my job is to advocate for the women, not for the people who commission, not for the governor, for the women. So I have to stand by what I'm making, but I also had a big responsibility. I went, I've really messed up here, because he's not going to let it out. And then what happens? Because the tour is set, but he did let it out and he did endorse it. And the women performed it first, and then we took it to the male estate. So we're doing all of this while we're doing this big project outside, and we showcase it at live theatre, and it's a hit. It's really simple. It's 4 women telling a very simple story. There's no set. There's no fancy lights, because we were touring it. We couldn't have a set, couldn't have anything fancy. But it's pure storytelling. And the director was Laura Lindo. So me and her worked on it. And she's a writer as well. So that combination of me and Laura working together, and that whole creative team, and the women themselves in the moment who performed it themselves inside the prison, meant it was a pure gem. So we went, this is the play we'll take to the Edinburgh Festival. So we took it to the festival, never been there before. So given that we set up in 1998, it's now 2015, so it's a long time. And then we go to the Edinburgh Festival not knowing what's going to happen. Then it's sell out. And then we win the Carol Town, the Best of Edinburgh Awards. And then in 2016, we end up in New York. And then we're on New York off Broadway. And then we get the New York Times Critics Pick. And we're kind of going, this is brilliant. But that was really brilliant. But we're political. How do we gather people in New York? How do we gather other people who are agitating for those people who are incarcerated in America? And obviously in America it's really different. It's all of that. They're inside forever kind of stuff. And the women we worked with, some of them had long sentences. The men had life. But all the women, everybody seems to have been in there for, 25 years, 3 strikes and you're there. Also, our other partners are academics and researchers. So also political women who are involved in it. So we've been working with women on a different project, which is another story, but a different project. But they connected us with people in New York, and they got us into a women's prison when we were in New York. And that governor walked in and the play was happening. The key change. All the women were on their feet going, yeah! And the governor walked in and went, what is happening? Who are they? What is going on? And I think the company's very good at that. I think we're very good at going under the radar and kind of getting into place. But with the partnerships, with all of the people who know the people and then can get us into spaces. So it's not in isolation. It's absolutely... and that we still continue to work with researchers and academics and who are like-minded around things, who then can get us closer to where we need to be.
Do you think that's the sort of key to the successful collaboration side of it, is that you've managed to find or be found by people who have the same values and really have the same instinct to be that bit disruptive, to do what's right from a social justice point of view?
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of things, because the art needs to be brilliant, which we strive to make the best art. Because if we make art that's okay, it'll make people go, oh, that was okay. It's got to really move people. So when we talk about creating empathy, and empathy means that you step into the shoes of those people that you see in that story, and then that's where change happens. So the theatre has to be brilliant. But Carol Tamber, who the Carol Tamber Award, is one of our patrons now. And I still was talking to her the other day, and she came to see that production. And if she hadn't championed that production and we hadn't won, and her mission is to help small organisations make the change. So, but also she has lived experiences of domestic violence, which she would share and say as well. So she also knows the issues that are in that piece as well. And she's a really wealthy woman, but she could really relate. Very ordinary, very easy to be with. And she really got behind it. And it wasn't because of the issues, it was because of the art. That's her first priority. So I think the art needs to be amazing, first and foremost, because that's how we started. It was how we worked, the trust that we built up, and what we created. And I think we were just fortunate that we did that. So we didn't have to convince anybody who we were. That was the reputation then we had for years. Everybody knew who we were. Trusted with their women, trust that we would make the best theatre we could. That's how we ended up inside the prison. But the researchers that came along, so Professor Maggie O'Neill was our first researcher that we worked with, and I was making a play with minoritised communities. And she had written a book, which I can never remember the title, was like Community and Borders. I took her book on holiday. I read it with a dictionary next to it and going, I don't really understand all the words in it. But then I was all like, oh, participatory reaction research is what we do. Ethnography is how I write. That's what I do. I embed myself in, and I write from the lens of the women. So then I emailed her and I went, I think your book was brilliant. I had a dictionary, but I thought it was brilliant. She went, I seen one of your shows, and I think you are brilliant. And then me and he started and we still to this day talk, work with each other. She champions the work. She's in Ireland now. She was the first one. Then we've had other people before, and after that we've had other people. Yeah, I could keep talking, so it's just...
No, it's great. I'm transfixed. Yeah, I mean, that's, to me, is the difference sort of sometimes between film and theatre. If you go to see a film, quite often it'll be like, you need to see it. It's the special effects are amazing, all of this sort of stuff. With the theatre, the story is the absolute focus of what you're going to see. It doesn't matter what whistles and bells are on the stage. If the story's a bit rubbish, there's nothing to connect with.
Yeah.
And you have found that ability to tell stories that haven't been told before. Is that an intentional thing, to go out to seek for things that need to be uncovered and need to be told? Or has that just sort of been an accidental thing that you, through these conversations with people with different experiences to your own and some similarities perhaps in some ways, that you've discovered stories? I mean,
we're involved in mentoring a playwright at the moment, and I met her yesterday, and she's asking me that question, like, how do you work and how does it happen? And it really is we walk in and we don't know. We have no idea what that group of women are going to talk about. So, and none of it is about writing a play, or none of it's about chasing funding, and none of it's about chasing the issue. And when it's a commission like Key Change, then you know you're going to work with the women in prison. The expectation of the commission is it's going to be about domestic violence. But unless the women talk about it, unless the women go there, and the women set the direction, so they name the character, they give it an age, they ask the questions they want to ask of the character, they then answer those questions, and my job is to follow them. So like when we were asked by the survivors of domestic violence, would we make a play about them? I still didn't know what that was going to be about until I worked with them. And then what I found out was that they felt really failed by the police. The police weren't responding. So the story was about the fact, it wasn't about, yes, it's about the domestic violence, but it's about what were the police not doing when they arrived on the scene. And then they walked away and just left the women because it was 2001. So they didn't have a duty to respond because there was children in the house. They could just leave. So the story became... It highlighted that, and it also highlighted what we do as a society. We close our curtains and we look away. We don't really know what to do, or we blame them. Go, well, why does she stay so long? So because we'd worked with other women's groups who had that opinion was in. And I suppose the plays, like my job, and obviously I'm 26 years now in terms of writing the plays in response, and I suppose my head has changed and continues to change all the time as well. So hopefully the plays are very nuanced, and it's not verbatim. It's not like we're just going, oh, so that's what happened. There you go, that's what happened. It's very much going, these are stories of things that happen in the context of the world that we live in, and what does that make us question about ourselves and the society that we live in. Like, so now I'm 11 years working in the prison. So I've just done a production called Rupture around incarcerated mothers inside prison. So after being 10, 11 years inside, in and out of the prison, I'm completely, even more so, questioning what is the role of prison, and why I find it really challenging. I'm trying to find the right word to it, because the right word for what I feel. It blows my mind every time I go in and out of a prison. I've just been working in the men's prison as well. So went into Dearborn prison with Rupture the show. So we took that in there. And I find the fact that working class people, majority, people of colour, people who've been in care are incarcerated, and that everybody outside of that has jobs based on the back of that, and they move around the world, and they talk about those people inside prison. It just makes my head go, what is that about? Why are they, and why do they eat awful? Why is the food awful? Why are they locked up so long? Why was the change so slow? And I think I've done 10 years now of research that goes, this is what needs to change for women. We all know. We were involved in the Corston report back in the day. When key change happened, Baroness Corston was on the panel with us. We still agitate for alternatives for women in prison. We still say women's prisons should be shut. We did a production the other day when we took Rupture into an open prison, and there's a whole row of women sitting with babies on their laps. And then the women go, you're having a conversation, and they go, well, my baby's not a prisoner, but I am. So the baby can go. And he's just go, what is that? What on earth is going on there? So the last production, Rupture, is very much the women taking back control. It's quite a fictional story. So Key Change is very factual. It's in the prison. This one is, in my head, it's looking at the abolition of prisons and asking the bigger. So it's reform and abolition all at the same time.
Fear Less, Do More is brought to you by the team at Square One Law. If you're enjoying this episode, hit follow or subscribe. It really helps us out, and it means that you won't miss out on any future episodes. We have some great fearless guests that leave you feeling really inspired. And if you think someone else would enjoy it too, feel free to pass it on, whether that's a mate, a colleague, or someone in your network. Thanks for listening. Now back to the conversation.
But the work that you've done, particularly around offenders and prisons, has helped to change some of the discourse around prisons. And you are you're on an advisory panel for the government as well, aren't you?
Yeah. So I'm on the Reduce and Reinvent and Advisory group to the government with the arts seat. So I'm in that role. Not a role I particularly went after, but my team went to me, you should do that. I'm not policy, I'm practice. But they were going, someone like you needs to be sitting at that table. So I went for that interview online in the hope and going, good luck. I know I'm not the right person, so you crack on, good. I can do a small group, something else. Then they offered me the role. And I was all like, this is not usual for me to be sat at this, in a policy kind of feeling around a table with a lot. But, so I've done it a year now. And to me, it's a big meeting. I'm meeting with the heads of education and skills across the country who can then support art to go inside the prison. So my job is to be part of that conversation in May. We're supported to then get them to understand what's the benefit of the arts for people inside prison. And I take it really seriously, but I find it nerve-wracking as well because I don't know much about, contracts or, the stuff that I know what I know, and I see the change that happens within a space, like the lads in Dearborn recently. We're a women's theatre company, but we all can't stop thinking about those young lads who were all lifers in Dearborn, and one of them has just written a letter to the company going, please come back, make art like you've just made about our experiences because of the way we made it. It's not like they just want art because they've got this artist working in the prison. They want it something like what we're doing, which is uncovering a truth about their lived experience in a way that will help their voices be heard by other people. So I will take that story with me. So I'm good at telling a story. I can tell their story and I can bring their heart to a space and ask and agitate for them to see why art is important and what change it can make for people inside prison. And then I go, please let them out, let them walk around, give them, there are prisons in America, men's prisons, where people sit around, you look at patriarchy, you look at things they need to talk about. And why aren't they in circles? Why aren't they talking? Why aren't they having a chance to, especially in Dubot, they've been in prison since they were 16. Whatever crime was committed then, they're in for 20 years. And they're not fed, they're not given anything that helps them grow into men and leave prison and not re-offend, if that's the way.
So what would you say to people who say, why are you wasting your time with people who've committed crimes? That's, there are lots of other marginalised communities you could be focusing on that haven't committed crimes. Why are you bothered with these people who've been a disruption to society?
Well, I suppose having that opportunity to work with key change to begin with inside the prison, and then meet people and understand who they are and what their life story is, that changes you and changes your and it's like working, I keep talking about Dabo, but it's like working with one of the young fellas who then says, and he's really respectful, and he goes, thank you for coming in, and he goes, I've been in since I was 16, I get out in 2035, and I was going, I will not forget that young man, I will not forget him. I have no idea what he's done, but he's a human being in this moment and I think as a society we have a responsibility. And I think as a working class person, I still then go, well, why is it working class people in the prison? Like, what do the middle class and the upper classes not commit crime? Do they not do it? Look at Donald Trump. Do you know what I mean? Look at people who commit stuff and just get away with it. And on the backs of prisons, people have their jobs. They walk around in suits. They have their wigs on. They have their gowns on. They walk around. I've been around a long time when I've seen it myself. I've been in courts. I've been around places where I kind of then see that kind of inequality. Okay, so anything that drives me is injustice. And the more I see injustice, then I lean into it. I work with anybody who then goes, this is an injustice is happening here. Will you work with us? If we can raise the funds, we'll work there. The lads have just gone, will you come back? We're all talking about it and going, how do we go back without compromising our focus, which is on women? Yeah. Make sure that we're not raising funds that then supports that project and takes away from that project. But it still means we can feel the call, but it's proportion. And how do we do it? And how do we keep a commitment to? And I think it's like a judgment about crime, like who commits a crime and what is a crime and why does somebody commit a crime? For the grace of God, go all of us in terms of life stories and our forks in the road. And I think unless you understand, I've met women, I've seen their mugshots, but I know what happened just before they went into prison because they've told me, but it's not in the newspaper. It's not there, but it did happen. Women commit crimes in lots of ways. They are committing a crime because the consequences of the lived experiences where they've been. So then they find themselves in prison. I think most of women in prison are in for non-violent crimes. Most women in prison have had that life experience that has led to prison. So why aren't we looking at why do we have domestic violence? Why is childhood sexual abuse? That affects everybody. Like the lads go, that's my mum. She's experienced domestic abuse in the story. The lads don't watch the plays and go, well, where's my story? They watch the plays and go, oh, I see myself in that story too. So where's the prevention? And I go, we've got a new government. And I'm really going, okay, so now we've got change. Okay, so now I'm 62 this year. The change is going to happen. I'm going to see it. It's going to definitely happen now. And now all I can hear is everybody go, no, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. They're not going to do it. They're not really going to, they're going to do it so slowly. It's not going to happen. And I go, oh, okay, so in 10 years' time, I could be working in the prison, going to the women. So we've just finished the workshop. So where's the change now? So we always end the workshops with a strategy for change. So where the women are now, where do they want to be in 10 years? What needs to change, not only for them, but society? And when I did that in 2022, it was the first time I lost a bit of hope. And I could feel myself going, I'm asking the women to do something that I don't believe is true, that change that they're going to now start talking about, like the prisons need to change. The Lord Farmer's report had gone, everybody was talking about all the different things that need to happen in prison. Researchers are just sitting and gathering dust. Nobody's changing and nothing's changing for these women. How can I ask them to consider a change? There's no support service outside for them. There's no investment in youth clubs, in communities. There's no drug and rehabilitation stuff going on. And then we put one of the moments, we talked about how much it costs for the women to be inside the prison. So £50,000 as an example. And the women came in and they were all, said how much it costs for me to be inside prison. And I was going, yeah. And then I went, oh, there's the politicisation. That's why you do this job. You do it because the more we all understand the world that we live in, and we're all politicised, the more we can make the change happen. And the more we gather in spaces, and the more we all see each other making the change, talking and activism, the more we're not in fear. And obviously your podcast was around fear, so I was reading that today. And Camilla Harris then was talking about how fear can spread, but she was also then going, courage can spread too. And I was going, in this moment, I think we need to spread courage, because I think we could be overwhelmed with fear. And I see courage all the time. That time I had a little bit of loss of hope, but I feel hopeful because of the people that I managed to sit within rooms.
Yeah, so that courage and that hope helps you overcome that fear that things might not change. Yeah,
because if you lean into the fear, I'll feel fear.
Yeah.
If I lean over there, I'll be there. But, you know, I mean, this bloke that we worked with when we did Lasagna, so that was a play around women who'd lost their children to the care sector or at risk of, and he joined our panel. He was a social worker and teaches social work at Durham University, and he was on the panel, and the whole room was going, oh, this needs to be in front of the government, this needs to do this, that and the other. And he went, rewind a bit, you need to go, this is where the change happens. It's grassroots, it's us in this room. It can go there, but this is what we need to be celebrating. It's the spaces where we all gather together. So that will stay with me as well, to celebrate what it is that we do as a company. Through the art, we bring people together in spaces, and we use the art. And as you know, we have post-show panel discussions. So we bring people in who've got lived experiences, people who are experts in whatever it is the story we're telling, and then we have a conversation.
And I think one of the things you just touched on there is around, you know, as a feminist, people still assume that that's because you don't like men. And I always say, it's not that I don't like men, I just don't like the patriarchy. That's what I don't like. And the patriarchy, to me, has done as much damage to men as it has to women.
Totally.
And to fix that needs everybody. And what you're demonstrating to me is that the power of women coming together and the change that you actually can affect. But also, you know, your story about Dearbolt there, that's about allyship. That's about getting in and getting men to understand some of the issues and see themselves in those stories and go, actually, that's not right. So if those people that you talk to in there come out of prison, their behaviour may be different as a result. I mean, that might be me just sort of romanticising the situation.
No, but I think it's true.
How do you how do you call men in? We're quite good at calling men out when there's bad behaviour, but how do you call men in and get them involved in that change process?
But I think they've just demonstrated it with Dearbolt. They've literally just watched a play where a woman climbs onto the roof of the prison. She escapes one night on bonfire night, and she reflects back over her life. And then the men watch the play, and the men go, lean in. I mean, they could have equally gone, well, this is not why am I here. But they didn't. They leaned in, and then when we had the post show, we had one of our panelists was a bloke who'd been inside the prison as well, in the system, and then was out, and he's working with some of the lifers in there. And then we're all having a conversation together. So they lean in because the theatre doesn't exclude them. The theatre doesn't demonise them. The theatre, we are holding the mirror up to the complex society that we live in, but the story's still brilliant, so the men like it. The men love it as much as the women love it, and it makes everybody think, so there's no distinction there. So I think back to the theatre needs to be brilliant, the story needs to be brilliant, then you bring the men along.
And it's I mean, obviously you would say that the story is the women's story. It's not your story, but there has to also be magic in the way that you put that together, and that you put that across to the audience for it to have that real magic and that impact. I mean, the first film that I ever saw of yours, first production I ever saw, was the film version of Rattlesnake, which is also about domestic violence and is an incredibly impactful piece of work. You know, I loved it. And then more recently I saw Mycelium. It's about sex work, and quite often if you watch a documentary even around sex work, it's titillation. A lot of it. It's done from a very sexualized, a very male perspective about women. Tell us about Mycelium and where that came from, and how you've sort of tried to flip that on its head.
So that came from, we'd worked with Sex Works before and another project, Rattle and Roll, years ago. And then I was running a workshop at the North East Sex Workers Forum, their annual conference. And I became aware there was a toxic debate between the Nordic model, which decriminalises the sex buyer, and the decriminalisation of sex work, which takes the criminality out of sex work. And these two camps can't talk to each other, so they argue and fight. And the other one thinks this is supporting violence against women and girls. The other one thinks that you're not letting this be led by sex workers, and we are the experts and we understand. And actually, if you decriminalise sex work, it will support sex workers not to, have violence and discrimination, all the stigma and all the rest of it with them. So I said, as a theatre company, what can we do to help with that toxic debate? If we make a piece of theatre, then we maybe can open up a space where people can talk. It was a big thing for us to do, to walk into, because it's the same as the trans debate. The people who are anti the decriminalisation model, so those, I know I'm being a bit complicated here, but the people who support the Nordic model, often within this camp, are probably anti-trans as well. So they're all kind of quite rigid in this stance on this side. So to walk into this area, I suppose, is quite a risk for the company to go.
So we're going to polarised, we're going to take a side.
And in some respects, we called it two camps. The project was told, so it was about two camps. But in the end, the people that we worked with were all people who support the decriminalisation of sex work. But in some respects, that's because the Nordic model camp has got a bigger voice and got bigger support. It's got more platform. The decriminalisation of sex work doesn't have that platform, doesn't have that support, isn't at the table. So in lots of ways, it's okay for us to be on this. But also, again, the play was nuanced. The play talked about lots of things. So people then, it had sexual exploitation in it. It had the experience of the Nordic model and what it feels like when you're an on-street sex worker, what it is like when you live in New Zealand and you live under with the legislation decriminalises sex work. What does that feel like? So it kind of does shine a light on, and it's set in the pandemic. So it's a moment when people are reflecting, and there's a moment when globalisation, capitalism, everything stops. There's big ships stuck in the Suez Canal, no goods are moving, the wheels shut down, the wheels slowed. There's wars happening. There's Brexit was happening. The wars were going up. So it kind of exposes the hypocrisy of the whole thing, where people then are going, so this is right, I'm right, you're wrong, this is what needs to happen and why it needs to happen. So I suppose I find it quite hard to talk about myself because I think it's quite a complicated story in terms of what it kind of captured in the end, because also it's written in my writing was in the response to during the pandemic. And if I thought about what do people take away from it, I think hopefully people just take away a moment to think about laws and decisions and power and how things move and why, and really see the human beings behind those, the power play. We've got so many people play politics, but these are the lives of people, in the Nordic model in Ireland, women become isolated, women have to go further, do more, because the power becomes with the client, because the client's worried about getting arrested now. So the client goes, well, come with me, let's go further, let's go over here. So if you're thinking about supporting sex workers, how does the Nordic model help? And I suppose that's the voice that's not heard. Because people go, well, of course. And as a feminist, you might go, of course, to end sex work, because sex work is bad, then obviously you want to protect sex workers as if they're victims as well, then you would bring that law in and that's going to end sex work. But it doesn't support sex workers. It does the opposite. And it's about who hears that voice. So that was the opportunity but through storytelling, to then go, this is what it feels like for people living under that law. And the decriminalisation of sex work was more complicated because when we worked with the collective, they were very much talking about what was life before sex work, the decriminalisation of sex work, and what's life afterwards. And then we were talking a lot about white privilege. So, that if people thought what was that story going to be about, what we discovered in the workshops was that there was the conflict between the before and the after.
It's a fascinating piece of it, and I think, you can read lots of your work on lots of different levels and different people will take different things from them. But I think the thing that stands out in all of them is that real lived experience. But because it's always across a number of characters and a number of scenarios, it also demonstrates really well that, one person's experience isn't another person's experience.
No.
And that's the beauty of life, isn't it? Everybody has a different take, and we should be respectful of all of those different views.
And I think that show includes everything that everybody might want to talk about, especially sexual exploitation. It has that story in the middle of it. And I think some of the people involved in it might have thought, oh, do we need that story in? Because that might kind of support the Nordic model or support the, look, it's all about exploitation. But that is also within the stories as well. And that whole production is led by sex worker activists, and they take that show now and they lead on that. They are the experts in how to use that story, and the collective in New Zealand, when that's a gift to the movement. So it allows them to lead on the conversation, because it's, you can see me hesitating a little bit around kind of like, 'cause I'm not an expert on it, but I'm an expert storyteller, as an could be said. So my job would then just to pull all them stories out and tell that bigger story. And also the whole global thing, you know, it's where my mad head was in the pandemic. You know, this is what I was thinking about. I was counting the income and expenditure of the country. I was thinking, how does everything work? How does money work? Like I said, I left school at 16. You know, for me, I walk in and go, what is that? So in some respects, that plays to my strength, because I don't know. So I do go, what is the maths of all of that? Why does goods move? Why do you, man-made, it's a man-made canal, the Suez Canal. It gets stuck, then nothing moves. Everybody, you know. And then you go, it's quite simple, a global chain. And look what's just happened. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, your works had international recognition, as you talked about, but you've also been recognised. You were awarded an MBE.
I know.
How did that feel? Because I can imagine as an activist, feminist disruptor, there would have been some mixed feelings there.
Well, I think on a very personal level, I think I was really shocked when the letter came, and really, and I had to really check that out with people around me, and then go, is this so? Because obviously the other option is to not accept it, accept or don't accept. So you have two options to go. But then on behalf of the company, I thought that was the right decision to accept the MBE, and had the blessing of people around me on that. And also as a working class woman, equally, that recognition is like something you don't shy away from either. You can then get that. You know, I mean, my education was poor. I did shorthand typing. Do you know what I mean? I had the expectations of my life were like low, you know, and then to have the journey I've had, and then to have the MBE, you know, in that respect was also great. But it was great for the company, and it's great now for the company. And I've just had received an honorary doctorate from Newcastle University last year. They're all great for the company, because what it does, it values what we do. Because it was the MBEs for the work the company does, and I'm the figurehead, but it's for the work the company does, and the change. So that means that you're taken more seriously. And as a working class woman, to be taken more seriously at the table, you need that extra bit, I think, as well. And also, I liked her. I liked the Queen. Do you know what I mean? She reminded me of my Auntie Maggie, and I really liked her. And I felt very emotional. And I was pleased it was her. I was pleased it was her in the end. But also, it's complicated because it's the empire.
Exactly. That's
I know.
An interesting dynamic.
An interesting dynamic, yes.
Yeah, but like you say, the profile and the attention that you get for the work that you are doing. It's the thing that sort of overrides all of that. And
I think when you're from the north of England, I think equally you have to really, you can go down south and you can see how the distance, and you can see how you're not visible. You know, we do amazing work, but you have to fight to be seen and heard. Even though we have the reputation we have and we have the success we have, we've just had a big review day, and then we're all the time talking about who do we need at the table. You can't be complacent about what we do. You really need to be then all the time very active and thinking about, we've been dreaming big for the next 10 years, you know, and where we all see ourselves in 10 years. And this is all of our co-creators sit around this table as well. It's a huge table full of women, people we've worked with over the years. And then we are all going, so how do we, and it's not one particular play that gets us in that. So we did this exercise going, so you get an award in 10 years time, what's that award for? And then we were going, so it's for the collection of work that we've made that's made the change, systemic change globally. So we dream that big. But you then go, who needs to be around the table? So who's your partners? Who's the people with you to kind of make that change happen? Because you can't be a silo. You have to be connected, and you need help.
You do. And I think that's the collaboration point again comes in, doesn't it? So what's next? What's the next project that we can look forward to?
So we've been international with mycelial and local in the women's prison. And now we're focusing on where we're based at Western Women and Girls Centre, so place. So we've started doing creative writing, which is a combination of the staff at the centre, some of our Gold Star members, a collective of women who've come through the company's work over the last 10 years, and volunteers doing creative writing. So we're supporting skills in terms of that. Then we're supporting delivery, facilitation skills, using the methodology. And then we'll bring some of them workers from the centre into our workshops that start next year. So we're going to be doing workshops with every group that attend the centre. And it'll, like I said, it's a blank sheet of paper. We'll walk in until the youngest group, which we don't normally work with under 13. So every single group will get a chance to use the arts to talk about their lives as they live in Elsick. And then we will make a production that'll be showcased in 2028.
I mean, that's incredible, and it's really exciting actually, because normally, people say, I've got this idea for a play and this is what I'm going to do it about. But it's as the consumer of that, I think it's really interesting to think there's something coming, but it'll be what it is, and it'll be really authentic, genuine, and through lived experience. I think that's fabulous.
And somebody said to me recently that they were going, well, what happens if you tell it becomes local? Because we're quite national now and international. And I thought, but local stories, like Punch has just been created, which is a production that focuses on what happened in a place called the Meadows in Nottingham, and it was and that is a global story, because that's about culture, and it's about what happens on a night when something goes wrong and one fella punches another fella and he dies. Then I'm not saying that's what the production is going to be about, because you're working locally doesn't mean it's not nationally and internationally themed. Yeah. So I think Elsick will talk to the world. That's what will happen during the production. It comes that way and goes out that way.
And everything's local in some way, isn't it? Everything's centred on place at some point in time. Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to, because I think when it's done in 2028, we're 30 years old. So we started in Elsick in 1998 as one of the characters. Then we, our 30th anniversary, we'll end those 30 years with a production coming out of Elsick. So it does feel like it's a nice cyclical thing.
A really good way to celebrate.
Yeah. And we'll still work in the prison. We'll still go back. We'll still figure that out. That's one of the kind of commitments the company has. Doesn't matter whether we win something. It matters that we've got a commitment to the communities that we have engaged with.
I mean, I could talk to you all day, Catrina, about everything that you've done. But I have one really, really important question. The camp vamps. Where did that come from?
So the Camp Vamps is a lesbian band, and then I've been in that band for 7 years. So the year before Open Clasp, and the band already existed. So when I moved to Newcastle, I would go and see the Camp Vamps and go, oh my God, they're brilliant. They are brilliant. And then I got invited to be part of the band. Again, go back to being young. When you're in the front living room and you're pretending you're on top of the pops, and then you kind of go, oh my God, I'm in a band. Do you know what I mean? And now I'm in a band, and now we're old. And we were young at one point, and now we're old. So we're probably the oldest lesbian band in the world. And we had a gig the other day, and we were going, we need roadies. We need somebody to help us lift. Because this is like, we're all limping away and we're all trying to lift stuff up. And the diversity of people that are in that band is very interesting, because when we take all the wigs off and we take all the gear off, nobody knows us the next day. Nobody knows that's us. So it's pure joy, pure fun, and it's really liberating. I mean, it's great when you're in a real queer kind of lesbian-led kind of barn in the middle of a field and everybody's going mad. It's just brilliant, pure joy.
So what's your role in the band?
So if you come and see me, I'll go. I know because people I'm the drummer, but I'm not. So I participate in singing.
Participate in singing. That's what
I participate in singing. I can hold a tune. There's many more in that band can sing really well. I can hold a tune in the band. I like messing about. I'm a performer. You know what I mean? I kind of used to be in a lot of the plays in the early life of the company, and then I stopped doing that in about 2010 or something. And then, so I like, it's an outlet to dress up.
It scratches that itch.
And also we all sit together and we all talk. I mean, before we went on the other day, we were talking about Trump and we were talking about all kinds in the back room. Then we all went on stage. But what people make of us, I've got no idea. And especially the older we get, I kind of go, oh, what does that look like for everybody? Because we don't have many clothes on. So yeah, Sexy and I Know It's one of the songs we do. So figure that out.
I just think that's fabulous, and I think you're fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for everything that you're doing. It's amazing, impactful work. I can't wait for the next one. And I hope we'll be having a chat in 10 years' time about some of the real change that has happened.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that this is the next, so I'm 72 then, and then really things have absolutely changed. And if not, shame on the government for not making it come true with what they said they were going to do.
Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for asking me. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Fear Less, Do More, brought to you by Square One Law. If you found today's conversation inspiring or interesting, we've added a recommendation for what to listen to next. That's either on the screen now or in the show notes. Take care, and we'll see you next time.